Welcome back to the Integrated Leader Podcast. I am Lauren Marie, and today we're wrapping up our series on leading with intention, thriving in high-stakes seasons. This week, we've tackled some of the biggest leadership challenges. On day one, we challenged the myth of busy seasons and how great leaders design their work to avoid chaos. On day two, we focused on balancing responsiveness with deep work, learning to play both offense and defense effectively. On day three, we shifted from firefighting to systems building, learning how to be proactive instead of reactive. And yesterday, we covered the power of clarity, why clear expectations and priorities reduce stress and make teams more effective. Today, we're talking about something too many leaders forget: celebrating success and resetting for what's next. If you're a high achiever, you might have the habit of hitting a big milestone and immediately moving on to the next challenge. I get it. But here's the problem. When we don't pause to reflect, recognize, and reset, we miss two critical things. One, we don't reinforce the behaviors that made success possible. And two, we don't set the stage for sustainable motivation and growth. Great leaders don't just move on to the next thing. They take time to look back, recognize progress, and set clear direction for what's ahead. In his research on high-performing teams, Adam Grant found that the best teams don't just focus on results. They focus on learning and recognition. Teams that take time to reflect on what went well and what could improve perform better over time than teams that just push through. The reason? Momentum. Think about a great sports team. After a big win, they don't just rush into the next game. They study what worked, celebrate their effort, and prepare for the next challenge with confidence. Your team needs the same. If you don't pause to acknowledge progress, your people start feeling like nothing is ever good enough. If you don't learn from challenges, you'll repeat the same mistakes. And reflection and celebration aren't just nice to have. They are essential for long-term success. So here are 3 ways to close out a high-stakes season. Recognize wins, even the small ones. Debrief with purpose, what worked, what didn't. And reset and re-engage for what's next. All right, let's dig in. Recognize wins, even the small ones. A common leadership mistake is only celebrating the big victories, but small wins are just as important. What you can do. End your next team meeting by asking, what's one thing we did well this week? Recognition creates positive momentum and reinforces the behaviors you want to see again. 2, debrief with purpose. What worked, what didn't? You could try, after a project or deadline, ask your team 3 simple questions. What went well? What could we do better next time? What's one thing we want to keep doing moving forward? This eliminates blame and focuses on growth. And 3, reset and re-engage for what's next. After a high-stakes season, motivation naturally dips. Great leaders help their team shift gears with purpose and clarity. Instead of letting your team drift, set a new short-term focus that gives them something tangible to work toward. Here's your challenge for today. Take 10 minutes to reflect and reset. What's one win you want to recognize? What's one lesson you've learned this season? What's one focus you want to set for your team moving forward? Great leaders don't just push forward. They build momentum and intention. That's it for today's episode of the Integrated Leader Podcast and for this series on leading with intention in high-stakes seasons. Before you go, I want you to remember this. Survival is not the goal. Sustainable success is. Chaos is not inevitable. How you lead determines the experience of your team. Leadership is not about working harder. It's about working with intention. If this series helped you think differently about how you lead, send it to someone who needs to hear it. Thanks for joining me this week. I'll see you next time on the Integrated Leader Podcast.